Erin Bradley, we're live on Women Investor Wednesday.
Whoop, whoop.
Woo, woo. I'm so happy to have you. I just, as in the prep today, I was just watching a video that you did walking in a forest, talking about people that might have been in a funk, and you asked them questions, and I literally sent it to 3 of my friends.
Oh my God, I love it.
Yeah, so good stuff. We're going to get to that stuff also besides your investing journey. But before we jump in, I like to just share with the audience, because some people might be new that will join us tonight, why we're here. So during COVID, I had learned a stat that of all of the commercial real estate investors, only 3% were women. And of that 3%, half were inherited or women who signed on their husband's guarantees. So I'm like, oh my gosh, that means I'm part of 1.5%. That is terrible. We have to fix that. And I started interviewing my friends who are in commercial real estate like I am. And I'm like, do you guys invest? Yeah. Well, where do you invest? The stock market. No, wait a minute. But we are actively working in commercial real estate. There's free legal insider trading. You're not throwing your commission in a deal. You're not investing in deals. No. Well, why are you not doing that? Well, I don't have $1 million. Okay. It doesn't take $1 million to invest in commercial real estate. Well, it's too complicated or it's risky. I go, so is the stock market. My Netflix dropped 80% during COVID, right? And then I kept digging. And then they said, well, we don't know anyone else doing it. Oh, I said, well, that makes sense because there's only 1.5% of us. So I said, let me put together a virtual summit where I interviewed 8 women like us who are interviewing or are investing in commercial real estate. I interviewed paths and journeys, and we had about 100 women watch, and it was awesome, very well received. And then since then, I've had 4 live conferences. In March will be my 6th, and we have about 250 women in the room, and it's gone from 80% of the room not investing to 70% of the room investing and 30% of the room investing with each other, which is amazing, which pursuing freedom, right? Which we're going to talk about your mission. And then I realized since I cap it at 250, because the intimacy allows for the trust for them to invest with each other, it's not going to get my mission of during COVID, I said, I'm going to turn 70 in 2030. And I said, by the time I turn 70, I want that 3% to go to 10. And then last year, the theme of our conference was think bigger. And I said, I wanted to get it to 30 by 30. So 30% by 2030. And I figured, well, let me just do the Women Investor Wednesday podcast every week so that I can get 52 more women that introduced to the world and get this stupid 3%, blown away. So that's why we're here. And we usually have about 300 people join us live. Sometimes they ask questions. Sometimes they're quiet. Maybe they're eating dinner while they're watching us, but I really appreciate you being here. And besides Erin being an investor, she has over 250 podcasts, right? Or episodes of your podcast.
Yeah. It's been a fun ride with the podcast for sure. I actually recorded 2 interviews today, and I've been on 2 other ones. It's so fun doing this. So I'm glad to be here.
So before we get into the author, coach, speaker, podcaster, how did you even how did you start this journey? I know you really help real estate agents. So just tell the audience a little bit about how you got here and something about your investing journey also, please.
Yeah. So, I mean, a wild journey. The cliff notes are that I fell into the mortgage side of the real estate industry in 07 or 06, I guess. And I went 100% in commission in 07 because I wanted the freedom and flexibility to work from anywhere and travel and all the things that entrepreneurship seems so shiny. And then I promptly fell flat on my face. Within a year, I was having my credit card declined for a $2 cup of coffee in front of the client and at financial rock bottom. And I asked my dad for advice, and he's like, if you think you're going to be good at this, just do whatever it takes. So I opened a credit card, hired a coach, and said, I'm desperate. Tell me what to do. And I started kind of plugging away, following the antiquated sales tactics that I was being taught. And it was fine. I was closing deals, but I wasn't quite feeling alignment. And so then I ended up reading a book called The Go-Giver. And in 2011, it changed my life. I always say thank you to John David Mann and Bob Burg. Totally created a paradigm shift for me and allowed me to develop a strategy that ultimately allowed me to double my business time and again without feeling salesy, and very quickly experienced burnout. I found myself with external success, but tethered to my phone and working 24/7 and feeling like a slave to the business. And so I just started second guessing everything. That's where Pursuing Freedom was born, because I didn't feel very free when I was having my credit card declined for a cup of coffee. And I didn't feel free when I was working 24/7, pregnant with my second child and running on fumes. So I was like, where do we go from here? And luckily I found some coaches and mentors that taught me how to scale the business. And I became really passionate about teaching real estate professionals everything I was learning, because I found that, staying trapped in the fear is not the solution. It's not the path forward. And anyhow, along that journey, that was the professional journey that led to me teaching workshops, publishing a book called Pursuing Freedom, starting a podcast by the same name, and then eventually full-time coaching, speaking, podcasting, which is what I do today. But along the way, we bought our first property in 2008 when we were flat broke, but we figured out how to do it with an FHA loan. It was a $95,000 one-bedroom row home in the city in Denver. And we lived in that until our first child was 5 months old. And then we became accidental landlords when we found a house up the street, and we bought it before we had sold the first place. And funny enough, we put the house on Craigslist back then. So we put the place on Craigslist, like, we'll see how it goes. And turns out the rental income on that property we were leaving behind was actually higher than the new mortgage payment in total. So that meant that our overhead started to go down. And we lived in that property until I was pregnant with baby number 2. And I went to the grocery store, and there was an open house sign 1 block over. So I stopped and went in, and it turns out it was the perfect place for us, because we always bought just what we need and nothing more. So like the 1-bedroom row home for an engaged couple, the little 3-bedroom, 1,200 square foot house for a family with a baby, and I worked from home. And then this was a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, 2,000 square foot home. And this was 2012. And we thought, well, the first rental worked out, so let's keep property number 2. And we ended up being able to use a VA loan, which, funny enough, I was in the mortgage business, but I had yet to understand VA loans, and my husband is veteran, military. So we were able to buy that house with 0 down, and we put in the earnest money, and the sellers paid our closing costs. So when we got to the closing table, we got the keys and $3,000. So we got our money back in a house. And so, we kept property number 2, and now we were getting hooked on it. And as a mortgage professional, I was always passionate about teaching consumers whatever I was learning. So even when we bought our first house, I just wanted to tell everybody that you can do it too, And then when we had rental properties, I wanted everybody else to know you can do it too. And I became really passionate about teaching my clients about, buy and hold, and buy your next primary when you need it, but buy only what you need and nothing more. And also buying rental properties is easier than you think, and all that kind of stuff. And so then it was 2015, and we wanted a condo in the mountains. It was part of our 10-year plan. And my coach said, why not now? And the kids were 3 and 5 at this point. And so I was like, I don't know. I guess I hadn't thought about why not now. So we thought, why don't we sell one of these rental properties, and we'll get the condo in the mountains, and we'll fulfill one of those bucket list dreams now. So we got lucky again at the timing of it. We found a condo in a little ski town that was about to, in hindsight, blow up in value. And we ended up being able to buy the condo for $195. It was just a 70s time capsule with wooden toilet seats and wood paneling. And we didn't end up selling any properties to do so. So then we got up here to the mountains, and we were here every weekend. And we thought, man, we really love it here. And our oldest was in kindergarten. Maybe we'll move here when the kids grow up. And I was like, well, if not now, when? Life is short, and we don't know how long we've got. So let's go through all the reasons why we think we can't. And we're like, well, we can't because of my business is here. And and like our friends, our family, and Mickey's school, and your job, and all these things. And so it's like, let's just try it out. So we came for the summer of 2016, and we put our property in Denver on short-term rental. At the time, it was legal to do so. And it actually doubled my husband's income. So I was like, well, this is stupid. Quit your job. Who cares? Let's go live the life of our dreams. And so we essentially retired him. And then we had the 3 rentals at this point. And the story just kind of goes from there. We bought a new primary because the condo had no washer, dryer, storage, or garage. And we actually sold that a year later for $295. So we made $100,000 on one property in 1 year. And that was interesting because that was the first time we'd ever sold something. So we were also kind of looking at that as like that being part of my husband's, the husband's income. Right. And then he took over everything else in our life, which gave me more space to continue to grow my mortgage business. So it actually was an incredible blessing. And it just kind of kept going from there. We've been in Winter Park now for 9 years, and this is the 5th property we've lived in. We did end up having one property appreciate so much, it more than doubled in value. And it was what we thought was our forever home, which we now know is a joke. And it ended up, after we sold that property, I was in a position financially to consider taking the leap and moving away, retiring from my mortgage career to be able to do the coaching and speaking and podcasting full time, which is what I've been really passionate about for a long time. And along the way, we've done everything from house hacking to the BRRRR method. We've done Airbnb, short-term rentals, converted our basement to a lock-off, did a 6-month RV road trip and homeschooled during COVID, and rented our property in Winter Park. That was bringing in like $8,000 a month. So that funded the travels, and we just really love real estate. So your show is about commercial. I was always playing in the residential arena until I got to know the community that we're a part of and started learning about syndications and passive investing and things like this. And so we ended up starting to diversify into some commercial investments, passive investments. We don't own any buildings actively because, frankly, I haven't had the bandwidth, and I love passive investing. Although it's in my bucket list now, like I definitely want to own some buildings. I don't know if I want apartment buildings or just boring old buildings, that, right. in the path of growth. And yeah, I mean, not every property was a slam dunk, but we were very lucky with the old adage of don't wait to buy real estate and wait. And
yes, I love that.
Yeah. And honestly, we've lived a very unconventional life. Our 15-year-old is living in his 8th property. We are staying here for sure until the kids graduate, at least, but it's been fun, and it's made us feel like there's no rules, and you can, I don't know, like if you really want to live a life by design, which is what I'm passionate about, I want to be able to be location independent, travel when I want to travel. I want to say yes to the experiences of life, but also to the career choices that feel aligned with the identities that we're evolving to become, because I just don't believe we should be stagnant. I don't believe we should settle or play small. And that's what I'm most passionate about, helping others see and believe that every little like weird impulse deep down inside that sounds like I wish I could, but is worth getting curious about, because it could be that you're being called to something that's really more fulfilling than what you've been accustomed to. And I also think that as humans, we tend to get curious about something. We want to learn and grow and expand and be challenged. And then sometimes we achieve mastery in something and we feel bored or stagnant or burned out, or we start convincing ourselves we're fine when we're not. And these are all the things that I love to explore and help people unpack. So that's kind of all of it in a nutshell.
I love the whole stories. I have a funny story about Bob, the Go-Giver guy. So I was at a National Speakers Association event, and I had just finished reading the book, and I think the second book, and I'm in the big, room, the auditorium or whatever, the big convention room. And I sit down at a round table, and it's dark because there's someone speaking, and then that person finishes speaking, and I turn and I see, and it's Bob sitting right next to you. Like, I just finished your 2 books. They were great. So that was
He's the real deal. So when I published my book in 2016 and I had read his in 2011, I put a note in the acknowledgments about the book. And so then I messaged him, but through their website, not expecting any response, some contact form.
Right.
And I got a response within 48 hours. I was asking if I could send him a copy of my book, and he sent me his address, and I mailed him the book. And then about 2 weeks later, I get a handwritten note in the mail from Bob. And then he actually puts a blurb from my book on his Facebook page and tags me. And I'm thinking, this guy is the real deal. And so I later invited him to be on the podcast, and he came on the show, and it was awesome. And I really appreciate that, because I feel like sometimes we have this perception of someone who's celebrity status in whatever world we may be in.
Right.
And so we don't even bother trying to reach out and say, hey, thank you for the impact you had on my life. And meanwhile, they're a human being who's been through all the same trials and tribulations as the rest of us. And then they come on, they share their story. And it's so inspiring for anyone who's feeling like, maybe I'm on chapter 1 and they seem like they're on chapter 10. It's like, well, let's learn from them, and maybe we can get there faster,
Absolutely. During 08 and 09, when our industry crashed, I had time on my hands. So I started a book club, commercial real estate book club. And he came on, and also Gary Vaynerchuk. I had all of these people. I would just reach out. I'm like, hey, I have this commercial real estate community, and we have a book club, and I'm having them read all of your books, and they would have it's one book a month. And I try to get the authors on, and most of them were very happy to come on and talk for 10 or 15 minutes about their book, of course. Right. So
yeah, love that.
I have a funny story. I went to a conference, Mark Victor Hansen and Jack Canfield, the chicken soup for the lover's soul.
Oh, yes.
And it was like 05. I had left a company I'd been with for 18 years, just burned out, had a 4-year-old single mom. I'm like, okay, I can't keep doing this life. This life I need to do a different life. Everything that you preach. And I went to this book writing conference. They were leading it. And the book writing conference turned out to be a motivational conference, because at one point I wanted to write a book, and then since wrote 2 books, but they did this thing, which is in one of their books about and this is way before the bucket list thing, write 101 things down that you want to achieve in the next 10 years. And Jack said, it's going to take, like 10 or 15 minutes. Well, it took me about a month. And the first 30 things were easy. The second 30 things were not easy, but not hard. The third 30 got pretty hard, but the last 11 were like impossible. So by the time you just want to finish it, and you're pulling stuff out of your butt, right? So 2 of the things I wrote in the last 11 were be a college professor, which I knew I couldn't do because I hadn't finished my degree at that point yet. I did it a year later, but I hadn't done it yet. So I'm like, well, I can't be a college professor because I don't have a degree. And live in a foreign country with my 2 sons before they turn 16. And I'm like, well, that's, so talking about your thing about being curious. So I always tell people when they do this 101, really make sure you go to the end, because that's when you just things come out of your being that you, and about 6 years later, I'm living in Spain with my boys before they turn 16 as a college professor, teaching for my alma mater for the summer abroad program. And I did that 3 summers in a row, where we lived in Spain for 6 weeks each summer.
I love that. So good.
So being curious and writing it down, or like what you talk about, and talk more about that, because I literally went down a deep dive on your Instagram. So everyone go to Erin Bradley's Instagram, because I just would pick pieces of it, because I just wanted to get this is what I do before I interview people, and everyone just sucked me in. I think and I'm like, I'm sending this one to this girlfriend and this one to this girlfriend. And yeah. So
thank you.
Pursuing Freedom. I have to get your book now, because now I like, and how long have you been in GoBundance?
Since 2020.
Yeah. So I'm new. I just joined in March.
Well, it's a similar story. I read one of David Osborne's books and then invited him to be on the podcast. And then we had a great conversation. He's the founder of GoBundance. And after the conversation was over, I let him know that sometime back in like 2016 or something, I had gone and tried to apply to be a part of GoBundance, not realizing it was a men's organization. And I was like, man, it's kind of a bummer you don't let girls into GoBundance. And he said they had just opened it in 2019. And obviously COVID had affected things in terms of the trips that they had planned. But so it was October of 2020. We were just getting on the road and I was like, sign me up. And then the rest is history. So yeah, it's been very instrumental in learning and expanding what you might believe is possible. And I think that's really what it comes down to, is this idea of the limitless possibilities that really exist, and then how our brains get in the way with the fear or the needing to know how it's all going to play out, or wanting to connect all the dots looking forward before we begin the first step. And so it's been a series of sometimes ridiculous decisions that feel insane at the time, or maybe even irresponsible or unrealistic or whatever. And then that biggest risk ends up being the smartest decision. And as you continue to build that muscle of recognizing the chatter and in the incessant mind, and how it plays a role in trying to keep you safe and keep you stuck, and that it's just that, it's just thoughts, right? It's just chatter. And so really getting intimate with the stories that we tell ourselves around why we can't, or why we wish we could, but, and whatever follows that is fear. So that's an activity that anyone can do. You can simply take a piece of paper, put down your 101 and say, I wish I could, and fill in the blanks, and then listen for the butt head, right? But listen for the butt, and then write that out too. Really write it down. What is the but? And that was what happened even when we moved to the mountains. Like, well, I can't move to the mountains because my business is in Denver. So that would be a fear, right? That's going to affect my business negatively. In the end, we opened an office here, and it ended up creating expansion in our business. Actually, we nearly doubled it as a result of being able to operate in 2 markets. And so that's just one small example. I mean, I thought when we went on the road, it was going to put us out of business because people are going to see me out on the road and think like, oh, well, she's not in business anymore. And granted, the timing of that refinance boom affected things, but we had a significant growth year. And so our brain says a lot of things that just need to be challenged and evaluated. And I often like do an activity with myself and with anyone that I'm working with, where when we feel called to something, so we're always called, right? Like we're on the leading edge. There's new desires all the time. We know that because every time we've achieved something that felt like that big goal, how long do we revel in it before there's a new desire, right? So we're here as human beings to expand, and I don't think we should resist that. And so as we're on the leading edge of unfamiliar territory all the time, which is that new desire, the place I've never been before, the thing I've never done before, right? It's always going to feel scary. So when we're there, we can look back, I mean, all the way back to our 20-year-old self, and just notice all the times, all the experiences in your life that your 20-year-old self would never believe was possible, where you've exceeded the expectations of your younger self. That is the evidence that you have no clue what you're capable of, and that your brain, you're never going to outgrow the fear. It's just going to keep on activating to keep you safe. And you just have to say to yourself, well, I have felt this before, and it turns out it wasn't right. The fear was actually incorrect. And I've even heard recently where you can see where certain fears were picked up along the journey to protect you at certain times, that you felt safe, or you experienced some tragedy or some failure or some criticism or whatever. And then they just stick with you. They're just deeply embedded. So they're no longer valid because they were developed at a time to protect you that you don't need anymore. And so that is like the deepest work of all, really, is just getting intimate with all of it, and then getting curious about it to say, is it true? And instead of saying I can't, because we just change the language to how can I, and then with whom, and then sort of the world starts to open up and expand. And it's just a more interesting thing to be curious and revel in the unknown, because most of our life wasn't really scripted by us anyway. Like even you and I meeting, it's not because I conjured you up in some fear-based analytical brain who needed to figure it all out and connect all the dots. And then I'm going to hunt you down, Beth, and we're going to have this fun conversation. Like the stars aligned, right? Our paths crossed.
Absolutely.
That's it.
And you know, gosh, there's all these different ways I want to go with this. First of all, go abundance. I don't know about you, but it's the first time I'm in a room with people that think way bigger than me. And I'm usually in a room and I'm the one thinking big and telling people, don't be afraid, think bigger.
Yeah.
But that's very exciting, right? So you have 2 kids. Are they both boys or a boy and a girl?
A 15-year-old boy and a 12-year-old girl.
And do you talk to them about this stuff? Because I talk to my 2 boys, and they're like, oh, here she goes again.
Yeah, I have a really funny story about that, actually. So just the other night, on Monday night, I took my daughter to this show. It's touring the United States. It's like so far a once in a lifetime thing. It's only happening this summer, and it's the like actors and singers from the Disney series The Descendants, along with the Disney series Zombies. And it's like they decided to do like a Zombies and Descendants collide world tour, whatever. She asked me if we could go like 3 days prior to the event, which would require us to drive an hour and a half, get a hotel room, pay, for these $125 tickets, whatever. And we've had a really busy summer. We've been to Costa Rica, we've been to Philippines, we've had a really busy summer. We've traveled a lot, and I was ready to lean in to doing nothing for the rest of the summer and stay in this beautiful ski town. So I'm like, no. Like my first response, like, no, we're not doing that. Like, I'm at my work, but blah, 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 blah. And then she's like, I said something like, besides, I'm like, when it comes to the world of like building and budgeting and building businesses and things like that, for every experience that you have, like you got to go and generate the revenue for that. And so like, I didn't bank on this. So it would require me to work harder. And right now I'm in a season of not wanting to work very hard because it's summertime. And she says to me, she goes, yeah, Mom, but you're a great manifester. Because she'll say one time my son was like, I thought your motto was say yes to life. And I'm like, okay, all right. You're picking up what I'm laying down, but
oh my God, I love that.
They both love to work. Like they both love to work and save. And we've been teaching them, the process of like save and invest half and then go have fun with half. So then it's like, we don't have to be afraid of having fun with the money because we're also simultaneously investing it. You know what I mean?
Right. That's what I do. So did you go to the event?
Yes. And it was awesome.
My son is in LA. My older son, he's 25. He has a podcast and he talks about superhero movies. He and his partner are like the Siskel and Ebert of superhero movies.
Oh my God. My husband and my son would have loved that podcast.
So you tell them to watch it. It's called the Escape Pod Podcast. I was in LA last week at the Fantastic Four screening, and he took me to the Mission Impossible premiere. So he's just living the dream. My little one is in North Carolina caddying at a very prestigious golf course. So I have an entertainer and a golfer.
I love that. So fun to see them grow up.
But they call me out on my stuff all the time.
Yeah.
What if we just put it out there, Mom? If we just put it out there, we don't need to know the path of how we're going to get there.
Yeah, I'm from Philadelphia originally. We were back home and I was on a walk with my daughter. She was probably 8 years old and God knows how many houses she had lived in at this point. And I was just admiring this house. I was like, oh, I like that house. She stops dead in her tracks. She's like, we are not moving to Philadelphia. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I just love houses. And she goes, yeah, you think?
Amazing.
So funny. She's hilarious. I mean, they're both hilarious. But
thank you for your husband's service, by the way, and the family's service. Because we know the family, has.
It was long before I came into the picture. So.
Oh, it was. Okay.
Yes. But I also feel grateful for his service and for everyone who's willing to do that for our country.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about Erin Bradley as the coach, because like I said, we've now had, this will be our 6th conference, about 250 women in the room. All 250 women each year would invest, except for the fear. They come to the conference. They know what the conference is about. They know I'm going to say, talk about money. They know I'm going to say, invest. They know I'm going to tell stories of my investing, and I'm going to interview 10 women on stage, and they're all there. But many, and one woman got up on stage last year and she goes, the first year I came and I thought, this is a great idea, I'm going to do it. And then the second year I came and said, this is really good, I'm going to do it. And the third year, so finally she goes, the third year I got a coach and I got an accountability group. And she said, since year 3, she's invested in, I think, 3 passive deals, 1 GP deal, and now she's a hard money lender. So but it took 3 years.
Yeah.
So and I would say of the 300 people who watch this live, and for the, I don't know, another 500 that watch the replay, 70% are investors, but 30% are not. And they have the money. So it's not a money issue. They have the money. And, I don't say go be a GP. I say find a jockey, find an asset class you like, an LP with someone.
Yeah.
And it's like, so can you, as a coach, or, talk about some of the things that you offer? Because I think many women that watch this, and some men watch this too, and you do take men clients also?
Oh, you broke up there. Did you say?
You take men clients also? Yes.
I would say my community is mostly majority women and some men as well. And yes, I work one-on-one with men as well. And so, in terms of fear, well, first of all, we all have it. There's nobody that we admire that's achieved something we desire that didn't experience fear before they took the action. And so I always just like to point out that the only difference between us and the person doing the thing, living that life, was a decision to do it. And it may feel like we're on chapter 1 and they're on chapter 10, but much like with GoBundance, I often tell people, if you're not putting yourself in a room where you feel a little bit of imposter syndrome, you're probably not stretching yourself enough. And that's really where the magic happens, is in the proximity with others who are doing it. And there's a lot of different ways this saying has been said. Sometimes you have to borrow the belief you see in someone else. Sometimes you borrow the belief they see in you. You could say the same. Sometimes you borrow the light you see in someone else, borrow the light they see in you, borrow the confidence you see in someone else. And that's the magic of proximity. So I think it's cool that you're putting on these conferences, these retreats, because it's giving people an opportunity to get in the room where they can see, like, if she could do it, maybe I could do it. And not be intimidated that someone else might be on chapter 10, but be inspired. And Mel Robbins talked about this in her book. She's like, comparison can go 2 ways. You can compare yourself to someone else who's on chapter 10 and you're on chapter 1, and have it lead you down a negative rabbit hole of inferiority or frustration or jealousy or whatever. Or you can look at that person and say, I'm inspired by that. And in her words in the Let Them book is like, let them show me what's possible. So if I hang around people on chapter 10 enough, chances are I can get to their chapter 10 by my chapter 4 or 5. The other piece of it, so like the first is just acknowledging fear. There's no getting around that. I don't know a lot of people. Some people have said to me they're fearless, and I think that's really cool. I wouldn't say that about myself, right? It's just getting more intimate with the fear and the story, and then really trying to understand, where did I pick that up? And like, where did that programming come from? Because it's really just potentially outdated software that was instilled at a younger point in my life that's just kind of outdated and doesn't serve me anymore. And I just sometimes need to be in proximity of the coaches and the masterminds and the mentors that can help me see that. And from that perspective, I'm never without coaches and mentors and communities. And what I've found is that if you think of fear as like clouds on a cloudy day, and sometimes the sun is up, but it's dark out there, right? So you're just trapped in the darkness of your own fear, worry, self-doubt. What if it goes wrong? Blah, blah, blah. But you're hanging around someone else who's been there. All they see is the blue skies on the other side, because they're looking from a different angle. And they're like, girl, you're crazy. Just part the clouds. Like, there's a huge expanse of blue sky here. And there's this opportunities are just limitless. Not to say that there's not risk mitigation. And honestly, I'm not even going to say there's not failure, because there is. Like, it's not a straight line. But to me, life is so much worse if I stay stuck in the I wish I could. and didn't give it a shot. And then if I hang around people that can guide me, then chances are I can get there a little bit faster and a little bit easier because I can learn from their mistakes. So yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is I always tell myself, lighten up. Like it's not the first time I've felt self-doubt. It's not the last time, and it's not going to define me. The only thing that defines me is the choices I make in spite of the fear.
Amazing. Brain fart. that went one ear and out the other. I'm going to come back to this thought that I was going to share with you that I can't think of right now, but tell us, can you talk about some of your programs, or do you want them to just reach out to you if they are interested? How do you want to do that? Because I do believe, I speak about coaches all the time. I tell them I was in a mastermind for $31,000. I'm in, like, and their eyes in the audience. And I'm like, guys, people are there ahead of you. Learn from their ahas and their uh-ohs. Oh, this is the other point. And I say, you can lose money. Real estate investing, you can lose. But I said, if you invested $25,000 in someone's deal as an LP, and if you lost it, if you don't think you could make it back, if you didn't have the confidence that I could make that money back, then you shouldn't be an investor.
Right.
But because there is a chance you could lose the money. But can you say, okay, well, I make 300, I can earn back the 25.
Yeah.
And if you can't say that confidently, then don't invest.
Yeah. I mean, I think that psychologically speaking, I don't know that it's for everybody, because I don't believe in talking anyone into anything. I really deeply believe deep down that it's either a hell yes or it's a no. And the hell yes is a feeling deep within your soul that you're like, God, I really want to do this and I'm scared. But I can even know within that, like, this is the right path for me and I'm scared. And so somebody asked me, what do you do when you're feeling stuck? And I said, the first thing I do is I start hanging around people that remind me of my future. I spend more time with people that remind me of my future, and it always lights me up, inspires me, builds my confidence until I have the confidence. So like, that's the whole borrowing piece, right? So to your question, my specialty has been helping people in the real estate world design businesses that fuel their life through, tapping into a clear vision that feels aligned with the person you're becoming, not the person you've been. The mindfulness and the mindset stuff to help people recognize where they are in the emotional, energetic, and honestly spiritual scale, and then doing that work to shift into a place of hope and expectation instead of fear and self-doubt, and then creating a plan with systems and support to help you get there. The lane that I've been running in has been mortgage and real estate professionals and some real estate investors. I'm not the coach for everybody. I don't think that any one coach is. And I'm happy to have conversations with people without trying to sell them anything. Like I genuinely love meeting people, connecting, and having conversations about what's possible, not what's probable. What's possible is limitless. What's probable is you're like closing off the valve. So when we get all like clogged up with, how am I going to make it work? I need to connect all the dots moving forward. I need to know what the outcome is going to be. Like, that's just feels heavy and stifling. When we come from a place of there's a million different ways to make this work. And even to the point of investing, there's a lot of asset classes. There's a lot of geographic regions. There's a lot of levels of investments, right? To being an LP, a GP. So don't worry about it. Just keep being curious, keep asking questions. And you know what? If someone feels sparked, and they don't take action for 3 more years, that's when the action's meant to be had. That's when it feels aligned. I don't really ascribe to the idea of like getting so inspired that I move too far too fast or rushing the process, because I think alignment is a huge piece of it. It has to feel really, really good in your soul and safe deep down within, even though it feels scary up here.
Right.
That's a lot of deep work. It's not just like, hey, get up and dump your money somewhere. So again, like I'm not here to promote me or myself. I love connecting with people. If anybody wants to have a conversation, just reach out and DM me and let's meet. And that's really, really fun and energizing for me, because this kind of thing, this lights me up and then changes the frequency I bring into the next interaction or decision or whatever. And it just makes things a little bit easier and faster and fun. So yeah.
For sure. So do you know my friend Aviva Sonnenreich in Denver?
No.
Okay, I'm going to connect you when we hang up. So she's a rock star warehouse person. She's got, I think her tagline on TikTok is the warehouse hotline. She's got over 1 million followers.
Wow, cool.
She just had a baby. She's young. I just had dinner. She was going to kill me for saying this, but her husband was on, it's just us. Her husband was on Hell's Kitchen with Gordon Ramsay. Do you know that show?
Yeah, of course.
And so I said to her, one day I'm going to come to Denver and your husband's going to cook for me. So when I was in Denver last week for the Globe Street Women of Influence conference, instead of going to the cocktail party for the Globe Street, I went to Aviva's house and her husband cooked for me.
Oh, that's so cool.
But I got to meet the baby. So it was very exciting.
Love that.
So I'm going to connect you guys because
awesome.
She's great. You're great. And thank you so much for being on the Women Investor Wednesday podcast. I love you. I love the aura.
Thank you. I love being here. This is just so fun for me. So thank you for having me.
And congratulations on what a phenomenal life that you've had with the mountain home and it was RVing, right? During COVID. Yeah. And, that's the life that I would hope everyone, that whatever they want, they should pursue, right? They're just like pursuing freedom. How can they find your book? Is it on Amazon?
Yes, it's just a little short $9 book on Amazon. And the podcast is Pursuing Freedom. We cover all kinds of things: investment strategies, mindset, system scaling, business design, lifestyle design. I mean, it's pretty diversified nowadays because I think everyone defines freedom differently. So by all means, check out the podcast, connect with me on Instagram at Pursuing Freedom Official. I'm on LinkedIn, and I genuinely just welcome feedback or, any messages. It's just fun, like I said, to connect with people.
Thank you, Erin. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.